Instant gratification is ruining your child's future. I went over the weekend with my wife to watch a play. It was Hansel and Gretel. And there's a scene where the mother tells the children their task is to go out into the woods and pick berries and fill this basket with berries so they can come home and have something to cook to eat. Maybe she's gonna make a berry pie or something like that. Well, they go out into the woods, and before the basket will fill up, Hansel keeps eating all the berries. He eats all the berries before he can fill up the basket, so they've got to stay out there longer and longer and longer. And that's sort of like instant gratification. Instant gratification is you can't wait to have the full result. And so you're eating the pieces along the way. You're taking from tomorrow so you can have something today. That can be a big problem. We might see this play out in a store where a parent will go into a store with a child and the child sees a toy that they really want and they want that toy now, and they start throwing a fit to get that toy or throwing a tantrum to get that toy. No amount of explaining is gonna help that child understand, hey, listen, we're not getting this toy right now. Even if you're saying, hey, we'll buy this toy tomorrow, or I know that we can get this toy online and it'll get to us really quickly or whatever. The child doesn't understand that and they're throwing their tantrum, their fit. And usually this ends up in a couple of ways. One being the parent either just buys the toy so that the child will stop crying so they don't make a scene, or the parent and child leave the store because the parent doesn't want the child to be going crazy in the store or is embarrassed about that. Or the parent says to the child, they get into a shouting match, or they say they're gonna get punished if they don't stop, or they give them a spanking right there in the store sometimes. Or sometimes the parents wait it out in frustration until the child stops crying. The real solution for how to handle this encounter is really preparing for it beforehand. And so I wanna go into a little bit about instant gratification and how this can affect a child long term. Children do not have great impulse control. They're a child, their brains are still developing. However, we can help them prepare to have great impulse control. The problem is many parents will just sort of understanding that a child's not gonna have great impulse control, not help them to develop great impulse control or effective impulse control. And they'll just create shortcuts, or they'll distract their children with other things so that they get the outcome that they want right here today. And an example of this might be a crying child wants something and you're not sure what they want. It's much easier to distract them with some sweets, like some candy, or putting on a TV show, as opposed to spending time with them, helping them calm their emotions and breathe and talk with them. Because doing that takes a lot of energy, doing that takes a lot of time, doing that takes a lot of patience. You'll probably be doing that many times over and over and over and over and over again before you start to see the results of it. However, if you just give them a sweet, you can see the result right then. They'll stop crying right then. But the long-term effect of that is that the child is then now looking for the sweet, now looking for the thing that's going to comfort them, rather than being able to develop that, comfort for themselves, develop that understanding for themselves, that security for themselves, that discipline for themselves to be able to work through tough times. The long-term effect of that is that they become an adult who wants results now and doesn't have the patience to build anything. Whether that be a relationship or a business or an education, they're not willing to be patient. They want that dopamine hit, or they want that effect, that gratification today. They're not able to delay their gratification. That's going to hurt a child long term when they become an adult, because they're gonna have a lot of challenges that they're not going to be effective at dealing with. They're not gonna have the mental tools in their tool belt, if you will. This is such a huge point, because the reason why a child would have problems later on in life due to this instant gratification point is because the parent is also doing the same thing. The parent is also right now wanting the result now and is not really willing to practice the long-term thing. And part of that could be because you're not sure it's gonna work, it's too much work, that you want the result now, all those sorts of things, right? But the way to support the child and you as the parent in the same situation is not just practicing delayed gratification, but having a greater understanding of why you're doing what you're doing, or helping the child to have a greater understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. And so the preparation in the example for a child going to the store and wanting a toy, the preparation beforehand would be explaining to the child, hey, we're gonna go into this store, and in this store, there are going to be toys. And we're not going into this store to buy toys today, or maybe we are going into this store to buy toys today, but here's the toy that we're going to buy. Here's the money that we're going to spend. And if we see something outside of that, we're not going to get it. And here's why we're going to do that. And asking the child if they understand, and asking, do they agree to that? And then when you get into the store and the child sees a different toy, or that big toy that they really want all of a sudden, that they didn't want 5 minutes ago when you asked them if they agree, then being able to be patient with them and explain to them, hey, remember, we agreed we were not going to get this toy, and here's the reasons why we said that, and here's what we agreed we would do instead, and here's what we can do next time. I see that you like this toy right now. How about if you agree, we can come back another time, and if you still want that toy, then we can look at that toy, or we can come tomorrow and play with that toy. And I know that's not always practical for every parent to do that. If you have a job that you have to go to every day, then that may not be practical. And this is why it's so important to create a lifestyle for yourself, especially before you have children, right? This is why it's so important to create a lifestyle where you can do things like that, where you do have that flexibility, where it's not dictated by the hours of a job, let's say, or at least one parent can spend the time with a child, be able to do something like that, because it gives you that flexibility so that you're not just giving in because it's convenient, or because you're not going to be able to come back tomorrow and you have to make up something so we can get out of here today. But that would be a long-term play. Preparing for childhood in that way, or preparing for your own children in that way, is a long-term play. It is delayed gratification. But the benefit of it is you may not see the direct effect right here today, right now. But the benefit of it is, if you're building a lifestyle like that, for example, then you get to live that lifestyle where you do have a more flexible lifestyle on the way to having children. As another example, the benefit to having that preparation with your children, and every time you go into a store doing that, yes, it takes you longer to go through the store. Yes, it takes you longer to even get into the store. Yes, you have to have this 5-minute conversation or 10-minute conversation every time before you go into a store together. But the long-term effect is, when you and your children go into a store, they're not going crazy. They're not throwing a tantrum to get their way, and they're not trying to manipulate you every single time. Eventually what happens is you go into a store and they say, wow, this is fun. I'll just play with this just for a little while. I don't actually want to take it home. Or they'll say, hey, can we get this? And I just want this, and I'm okay with this. And I know there are other things, but I just want this for right now. And that allows your child to develop in a way where they can make really disciplined choices for themselves, not based on just an emotion right here in this moment. Being able to slow down and go, hey, I like this right now, but I also have a lot of toys at home, and I'm gonna play with those. I'm just playing with this for right now because it's fun, and I can put this away. And when they become an adult, they can make decisions based on, it's fun to go do this or do that, but that can't be my whole life. My whole life can't be centered around fun, because if you're an adult, you know that life is not always centered around fun. There's some other things that have to be done as well, so you can have more fun. But as the parent, it's your responsibility to practice delayed gratification, to practice not having that instant gratification, and practice developing for yourself that understanding. And that's what I do with my parents, is I help them understand for their children, here's what you need to understand in this situation in depth, and here's how you can expand your understanding. And then we have tools where the child can expand their understanding as well in a much more rapid pace than what most parents think is even possible. And then they see results from their kids being able to actually comprehend what the adult is saying, what the parent is saying, and then being able to consider that and make a decision based on understanding, not just based on confusion, or I just have this energy inside me and I don't get what you're saying, but being able to develop with the parent and going, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. That makes total sense. Okay. And they can actually agree not be forced into an agreement. Never want to force someone into an agreement if we can avoid it, right? We never want to force children to do things, because then they're just doing things out of our force or when we're there, as opposed to them making the decisions for themselves. And the whole point of educating them is for them to grow up and be independent, actually, not forced into a fake independence where they're going out forced to go do things on their own, but they don't understand how to or why to. But actually helping them develop to the point where they can understand things so much that they want to go out and do it on their own. Let's practice giving our kids the stability and showing them delayed gratification from us so that they can have the best future ever. If you have any questions on how to do that, how can I get my kid to practice delayed gratification? How can I practice delayed gratification so that my kid can have a future that's not just based on impulse decisions? Send me a message and I can show you what some other parents are doing so that their kids can really practice with their negotiation skills, their persuasion skills, and be more reasonable in these sorts of situations. I'll see you next time. Bye.